Margaret Kellerman thought she had me cornered when she handed me that demolition notice, her manicured fingers trembling with vindictive satisfaction. "Tear it down, or I'll make your life hell," she hissed, pointing at my backyard pool through the fence. But as I stood there, holding the bogus paperwork that would destroy everything I'd built for my daughter. Distant sirens began wailing through our quiet suburb. Margaret's face went white. She didn't know that 20 minutes earlier, I'd made a phone call that would change everything. Sometimes karma doesn't just knock it kicks down the door wearing a badge. David Chen had been staring at the cracked concrete for 3 hours, his hands raw from scrubbing chlorine stains that had been there since his daughter Emma was 7. The pool wasn't much to look at, a modest rectangular affair that had seen better decades, but it was theirs. More importantly, it was Emma's. "Dad, you missed a spot." He turned to find his 16-year-old daughter standing in the doorway, her swim team duffel bag slung over her shoulder. Even in her casual clothes, Emma moved with the fluid grace of someone who'd spent half her life in the water. State championships were 3 months away, and she'd been training religiously in their backyard pool every morning at 5 a.m. "Which spot?" David asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. Emma grinned and pointed to his reflection in the pool's surface. "That one." Despite everything weighing on his mind, David found himself smiling. Emma had that effect on people, a natural lightness that made even the darkest situations seem manageable. It was a gift her mother had possessed too, before the cancer took her 2 years ago. "Your technique's getting sloppy," David said, nodding toward her bag. "Coach Peterson worked you hard today." "Always does." Emma's expression grew serious. "Dad, about the pool, we're not talking about that right now." "But Mrs. Kellerman said..." "Mrs. Kellerman says a lot of things." David's voice carried an edge that made Emma step back. "Most of them aren't worth repeating." The truth was, David had been avoiding this conversation for 2 weeks, ever since Margaret Kellerman had first appeared at his door with her clipboard and her self-righteous smile. Their neighbor had moved in 6 months ago, inheriting the massive colonial next door from her late aunt, and had immediately begun what she called neighborhood improvement initiatives. The pool was her latest target. "It's an eyesore," she declared during their first confrontation, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to getting her way. "Property values in this area have increased 40% in the last 3 years. Your little ... project is dragging down the entire block." David had tried to be reasonable. He'd explained about Emma's training, about the swimming scholarships she was pursuing, about the memories soaked into every tile. Margaret had listened with the patience of a shark waiting for the right moment to strike. "I'm sure there are public pools," she'd said, "community centers, places more appropriate ... for that sort of thing." The dismissal in her voice had ignited something in David's chest, but he'd kept his composure. He'd learned long ago that anger solved nothing, especially when dealing with people who wielded their wealth like a weapon. That was 2 weeks ago. Today, she'd escalated. The doorbell rang with the aggressive persistence of someone who expected immediate attention. David checked his watch. 6:47 p.m. Emma was upstairs doing homework, and he'd been hoping for a quiet evening to figure out their next move. Margaret Kellerman stood on his porch like a general reviewing troops, her silver hair pulled into a severe bun, her designer suit unmarked by the humid evening air. She held a manila envelope in her manicured hands. "Mr. Chen," her voice carried the false courtesy of someone delivering bad news. "I hope you've had time to consider our previous conversation." "Mrs. Kellerman." David kept his tone neutral. "What can I do for you? It's what you can do for the neighborhood." She extended the envelope. "I've taken the liberty of consulting with the city planning department. It seems your pool installation never received proper permits." David's stomach dropped, but he kept his expression steady. "I'm sorry, 19 years ago, when you installed that pool, you failed to obtain the necessary permits from the city. The installation violates current safety codes, property line setbacks, and environmental regulations." Margaret's smile was sharp as a blade. "I'm afraid you'll need to remove it." "Let me see that." David opened the envelope with steady hands. Though his heart was racing, the documents looked official city. Letterhead, official seals, the works. But something felt wrong. The language was too precise, too convenient, and the signatures. "This is dated today," David said. "Yes, well, the city works quickly when property values are at stake." Mrs. Kellerman, I built this pool with my father-in-law. We pulled every permit, followed every regulation. I have the documentation. Perhaps you should find it then." Her voice carried a threat wrapped in silk. "Because, according to the city, you have 30 days to remove the pool or face legal action. The fines start at $5,000 and increase daily." David felt the world tilt slightly. $5,000 might as well have been $50,000. Since Sarah's death, he'd been struggling to keep up with Emma's training expenses, equipment costs, and the mortgage on their modest house. Job at the electronics repair shop provided enough to survive, but barely. There has to be some mistake. The only mistake was allowing this situation to continue for so long. Margaret's mask of politeness slipped slightly. "Mr. Chen, I'm not an unreasonable woman. I understand this is ... inconvenient, but progress requires sacrifice. This neighborhood is transforming, and frankly, some elements are holding it back." The words hit David like a physical blow. He'd heard that tone before, the subtle emphasis on some elements. The implication that he and Emma didn't belong among the pristine lawns and luxury cars that had begun populating their street. "My daughter trains in that pool every day," David said, his voice carefully controlled. "She's ranked 3rd in the state for her age group. Swimming is her future." "I'm sure she's very talented." Margaret's tone suggested she was sure of no such thing. But personal hobbies can't supersede community standards. There are public facilities available. The YMCA, I believe, has a pool. The YMCA is 40 minutes away. Emma trains at 5 a.m. before school. Then perhaps she should consider other interests. Academic pursuits, perhaps something more ... practical. The condescension in her voice made David's hands clench into fists. But he'd learned to channel anger into determination. A skill honed through years of fighting insurance companies and medical bills during Sarah's illness. "I'll need to review these documents with my lawyer," he said. Margaret's laugh was like breaking glass. "Mr. Chen, I've done my research. You haven't retained legal counsel in 2 years, not since your wife's medical bills. Do you really think you can afford to fight the city?" The words were a slap across the face, delivered with surgical precision. David felt his composure cracking. But Emma's voice drifted down from upstairs. She was on the phone with a teammate, discussing practice, times, and split intervals, her future flowing through every word. 30 days, Margaret repeated, turning to leave. "I'd suggest you start getting quotes from demolition contractors. I can recommend several companies that work quickly and discreetly." As she walked away, David noticed the way she moved like someone who'd never been told no, never faced a problem that couldn't be solved with money or influence. It was a confidence he'd once envied, back when he thought wealth and power were things to aspire to rather than weapons to fear. He closed the door and leaned against it, the envelope feeling like lead in his hands. Through the kitchen window, he could see their pool glowing under the security light, its surface reflecting the stars. Tomorrow morning, Emma would be out there at dawn, cutting through the water with the precision of a blade, chasing dreams that seemed more distant with each passing day. David pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found the number he'd been avoiding for weeks. Jim Morrison had been Sarah's brother, a successful lawyer who'd offered help countless times since the funeral. David had always declined, too proud to accept what felt like charity. Pride, he realized, was a luxury he could no longer afford. The phone rang twice before Jim picked up. "David, everything all right, Jim? I need a favor, and I need you to keep this between us for now." "Of course, what's going on?" David looked out at the pool, where Emma's future floated like light on water. "I need you to research someone for me, Margaret Kellerman. She moved into the Morrison house 6 months ago, and she's causing problems." "What kind of problems? The kind that destroy families?" David's voice hardened. "And Jim, I need you to be thorough. Something tells me Mrs. Kellerman has skeletons in her closet. We just need to find the right bones." As he hung up, David heard Emma's footsteps on the stairs. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, her expression serious beyond her years. "Dad, who is at the door?" "Just a neighbor, Mrs. Kellerman." Emma's voice carried a note of concern. "Some kids at school said she's been asking questions about us, about Mom's medical bills, about whether we're going to sell the house." David felt ice form in his veins. "What kind of questions?" "I don't know exactly. But Dad..." Jim Morrison's office occupied the 15th floor of a downtown glass tower. its windows offering a panoramic view of the city David could barely afford to visit. He sat across from his brother-in-law's mahogany desk, watching Jim's expression grow darker with each page of the file spread between them. "This is interesting," Jim said, his voice carrying the careful tone of a lawyer who'd found something significant. "Margaret Kellerman doesn't exist." David's coffee cup stopped halfway to his lips. "What do you mean?" "I mean the woman living next door to you has been using that name for exactly 7 months. Before that, there's no record of a Margaret Kellerman anywhere in the state database." Jim leaned back in his leather chair. "No birth certificate, no marriage license, no property records, nothing. That's impossible. She inherited the house from her aunt. Actually, she didn't." Jim pulled out another document. The Morrison house was purchased by a shell company called Riverside Development, LLC. The deed transfer happened 6 months ago, and guess who's listed as the company's sole officer? David studied the paperwork, his electronics repair background making him naturally suspicious of things that seemed too clean, too convenient. Margaret Kellerman. Bingo. But here's where it gets interesting. Jim's fingers drummed against his desk. "I had a friend in corporate law run the registration. Riverside Development was funded by a wire transfer from a Cayman Islands account. We're talking serious money here, David. $2.7 million. The number hung in the air like smoke. David thought about his own struggles to pay. Emma's swim team fees, about the second-hand equipment and early morning practices that defined their world. Why would someone with that kind of money care about my pool? That's what I asked myself, so I dug deeper." Jim opened his laptop and turned it toward David. "Meet Patricia Kellerman, formerly of Westchester County, New York." The photograph showed a woman who looked remarkably like Margaret, but younger, softer somehow. The accompanying article made David's blood run cold. Embezzlement, he read. Allowed $15 million from a children's cancer charity. Patricia Kellerman was the chief financial officer for Hope's Promise Foundation. She systematically diverted funds into personal accounts over a 3-year period. Jim's voice hardened. The money was supposed to go to treatment programs for kids who couldn't afford cancer care. David felt sick. When was this? 2 years ago? She disappeared before the trial, forfeited a $2 million bond, and hasn't been seen since. Jim's expression was grim. Until now, she's been hiding here. In plain sight, it gets worse. Jim pulled up another screen. "I contacted a private investigator I know in New York. Patricia Kellerman has done this before. She establishes herself in a community, usually upper-middle-class neighborhoods, and then systematically drives out families she considers undesirable. The pattern is always the same: fake city documents, harassment, legal threats. But why? What's the point? Property values. She identifies neighborhoods on the verge of gentrification, then accelerates the process, forces out the longtime residents, flips the properties, and moves on. In Westchester, she cleared out an entire block of working-class families. Their houses were demolished to make room for luxury condos." David stared at the laptop screen, pieces clicking into place. "She's not just targeting me, she's targeting the whole neighborhood. That's my guess. Your pool is just the beginning. Once she establishes a precedent that city regulations can be retroactively enforced, she can go after anyone. The Hendersons' vegetable garden, the Johnsons' home workshop, Mrs. Garcia's daycare business." The scope of Margaret's plan hit David like a physical blow. She wasn't just threatening Emma's future, she was preparing to destroy an entire community. Families who'd lived here for decades, raised their children here, built their lives here. Of it was just collateral damage in her financial scheme. "We have to stop her," David said. "We will." Jim's voice carried the quiet confidence of someone who'd spent years fighting battles in courtrooms. "But David, this woman is dangerous. She's facing federal charges, and if she's caught, she's looking at 20 years in prison. People in that position sometimes make desperate choices." David thought about Emma, about the fear in her voice when she'd mentioned Margaret's questions. "What do you need me to do?" "Nothing yet. I'm going to contact the FBI field office, let them know their fugitive has been found. But that could take time. Federal investigations move slowly. In the meantime, I want you to be careful. Don't confront her directly. Don't let her know we're investigating." "What about the pool? Those demolition papers?" Jim smiled for the first time since David had arrived. Those are forgeries. Pretty good ones, but forgeries nonetheless. I've already contacted the city planning department. Relief flooded through David like cold water on a hot day. So we're safe, for now. But David, she's not going to stop. When she realizes the fake documents aren't working, she'll escalate. That's her pattern. David left Jim's office with a mixture of hope and dread churning in his stomach. The afternoon traffic was heavy, giving him time to think as he crawled through downtown. Margaret Patricia Kellerman, had built her entire life around destroying other people's lives. She was methodical, patient, and utterly ruthless. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd threatened his daughter. David's phone buzzed, with a text from Emma. "Dad, Mrs. K came by again. She left something for you." His grip tightened on the steering wheel. 20 minutes later, he was pulling into his driveway, noting the pristine condition of Margaret's lawn compared to his own modest yard. She'd spent money on professional landscaping, security cameras, even a decorative fountain that seemed designed to make the neighboring properties look shabby by comparison. Emma met him at the door, her face pale with worry. She was here for like an hour, Dad, just ... watching the house, taking pictures. Pictures of what? Everything. The pool, the fence, our car. She had this fancy camera with a big lens. Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. And Dad, she asked me about Mom's medical bills. She knew about the second mortgage, about the insurance problems. How could she know that? David felt his carefully controlled anger beginning to boil over. Margaret had been investigating them, digging into their private pain, weaponizing their grief. What did she leave? Emma handed him a thick envelope, her hands shaking slightly. She said it was time-sensitive. Inside, David found a new set of documents, this time targeting the fence between their properties. According to the paperwork, the fence violated property line setbacks and needed to be moved 3 feet into David's yard. The cost estimate attached was for $12,000. "This is harassment," David said, his voice tight with fury. "There's more." Emma's voice was barely audible. "She knows about the scholarship interviews. She mentioned the state championships. Said it was too bad they might not happen." David's blood turned to ice. What did she mean by that? "I don't know. But Dad, she scared me. There's something wrong with her. The way she looks at us, like we're not really people." David pulled Emma into a hug, feeling the weight of his promise to protect her. Margaret had crossed a line by threatening his daughter directly. But now he knew who she really was, what she was capable of. The question was, how far would she go to protect her secret? His phone rang. Jim's name appeared on the screen. "David, we have a problem. I just got off the phone with the FBI, Patricia Kellerman. Isn't just a fugitive, she's suspected in the death of a witness who is going to testify against her. An accountant named Michael Torres. He died in a car accident 3 weeks before the trial." David felt the ground shift beneath his feet. "Are you saying I'm saying we're not dealing with just a white-collar criminal? This woman has killed before, and she'll kill again to protect herself. David, I need you to take Emma and get out of that house tonight." Through the kitchen window, David could see Margaret's house, its windows glowing like eyes in the gathering dusk. As he watched, a figure moved past one of the window stall. Elegant, patient. "Dad." Emma's voice seemed to come from very far away. "You're scaring me." David forced himself to smile, to project the calm confidence that had carried them through Sarah's illness and the dark months that followed. But inside, his mind was racing. Margaret Kellerman had spent months planning their destruction, had researched their vulnerabilities, had turned their grief into a weapon against them. But she'd made one crucial error in her calculations. She'd assumed that David was just another obstacle to be removed, another working-class family to be displaced in the name of progress. She was about to learn that some families don't break easily, and some fathers will do anything to protect their children. "Pack a bag," David said quietly. "We're going to stay with Uncle Jim for a few days." "Why? What's wrong?" David looked out at the pool where Emma had spent countless hours chasing her dreams, where Sarah had taught her to swim, where 3 generations of their family had created memories that no amount of money could buy. "Nothing's wrong," he said, "but sometimes the best defense is a good offense. And Mrs. Kellerman is about to find out what happens when you threaten the wrong family." As they packed their bags, David made up. Special Agent Sarah Martinez had been tracking Patricia Kellerman for 18 months, following a trail of financial destruction that stretched from the Cayman Islands to rural Connecticut. The fugitive had vanished like smoke after jumping bail, leaving behind victims whose children had died waiting for cancer treatments that never came. Now, sitting in her unmarked sedan 3 blocks from Margaret Kellerman's pristine colonial, Martinez felt the familiar electric anticipation of a hunt reaching its conclusion. The tip from David Chen had been a gift, precise, detailed, and verifiable. More importantly, it had come from someone with nothing to gain and everything to lose. Subject is in the house. Her partner, Agent Rodriguez, murmured into his radio. Lights on in the main floor, movement in what appears to be the kitchen. Martinez studied the surveillance photos they'd taken over the past 6 hours. Patricia Kellerman had aged well, her face expertly reconstructed by what must have been expensive plastic surgery. But the bone structure was unmistakable, and the arrogant tilt of her head was identical to the woman who'd smiled for cameras while children died. Backup units are in position, Rodriguez continued. But Martinez, we need to move fast. Chen's intel suggests she's planning something for tonight. Martinez's jaw tightened. David Chen had called the FBI tip line at 8:47 p.m. By 9:30, she'd been on a plane from New York. By midnight, they'd confirmed Patricia Kellerman's identity through facial recognition and financial records. The shell company, the forged documents, the systematic harassment hit all fit her pattern. But something was different this time. In previous cases, Patricia had maintained careful distance from her victims, using lawyers and city officials. To do her dirty work here, she'd gotten personal. She'd threatened a 16-year-old girl directly, had dug into a family's private grief, and weaponized it. She's desperate, Martinez said. Desperate people make mistakes. Or they do something stupid. Rodriguez's voice carried the weight of 20 years in federal law enforcement. Chen said she knows about the swimming championships. If she's planning to hurt the kid, she won't get the chance. Martinez's phone buzzed with a text from David Chen. She's moving. Black sedan, heading toward downtown. Emma's safe she's with her coach. Martinez felt her pulse quicken. All units, subject is mobile. Black sedan, license plate, ... She squinted at the photo David had sent. Romeo Savant, and Mike Delta Kex. Copy that. We have eyes on the vehicle. But as Martinez watched Patricia's house, something felt wrong. The lights were still on. Movement was still visible in the kitchen. If Patricia had left in the sedan, who was in the house? Rodriguez, something's not right. Chen says she left, but the explosion shattered the evening quiet like a thunderclap. Martinez threw herself against the car door as debris rained down on their position, where Patricia Kellerman's house had stood moments before. Orange flames now clawed at the night sky. Jesus Christ! Rodriguez was shouting into his radio. We need fire department, EMS, bomb squad, house explosion, multiple agencies responding. Martinez was already running toward the flames, her training overriding the shock. But as she reached the sidewalk, she saw something that made her blood freeze. David Chen was standing in his driveway, staring at the inferno with an expression of complete bewilderment. Mr. Chen. Martinez badged him quickly. FBI Special Agent Martinez. Are you hurt? I know. I'm fine, but I don't understand. She left 20 minutes ago. I saw her car. I sent you the photo. How could she be in the house? Martinez's mind raced through the possibilities. Timer device, remote detonator, or Mr. Chen, you said your daughter is with her coach. Yes, Emma's at the community center. Thursday night training session. She won't be back until David's face went white. Oh, God! The community center is where Patricia was heading. Martinez was already sprinting toward her car, Rodriguez close behind. All units, possible threat to the Riverside Community Center. Suspect may be targeting a minor. Move, move, move. As they raced through the suburban streets, Martinez's phone rang. David Chen's voice was tight with panic. Agent Martinez, I called the community center. No one's answering. The training session should have ended 10 minutes ago. We're 3 minutes out, Martinez said, but her heart was pounding. Patricia Kellerman had just destroyed evidence, eliminated her hideout, and disappeared into the night. If she was cornered, if she felt she had nothing left to lose, Community center parking lot was eerily quiet. Martinez counted 12 cars, including the beaten Honda that David had described as belonging to Emma's coach. But something was wrong with the lighting half. The parking lot was dark, as if someone had cut the power. "Rodriguez, take the back entrance. I'll go through the front." Martinez approached the building with her weapon drawn, every instinct screaming danger. Through the glass doors, she could see the pool area lanes of blue water reflecting emergency. Lighting, but the water wasn't still. Something was moving in the far lane. The doors were unlocked. Martinez slipped inside, the smell of chlorine and fear heavy in the air. She could hear voices now, a woman's voice, calm and controlled, and a younger voice, defiant despite obvious terror. "Really think your father can protect you?" "He's just a repairman, Emma. A small man in a small life, trying to hold on to something that was never really his." Martinez moved along the wall, staying in the shadows. In the pool area, she could see them now. Patricia Kellerman stood at the deep end, elegant, even in crisis, holding what appeared to be a pistol. In the water, Emma Chen treaded water in the center of the pool, her coach floating motionless nearby. "You killed him," Emma said, her voice carrying across the water. "Coach Peterson never hurt anyone." "Coach Peterson was in the wrong place at the wrong time," Patricia replied. Just like you. Just like your father. This neighborhood was perfect before you people arrived with your little dreams and your little lives." Martinez inched closer, calculating angles and distances. Patricia was 15 feet from the pool's edge, too far for a clean shot with Emma in the water, but she could see Rodriguez moving into position on the far side of the pool deck. "You're not going to kill me," Emma said, and Martinez was amazed by the strength in the girl's voice. "Because my dad already called the FBI. They know who you are, Patricia." Patricia's composure cracked slightly. "Clever girl, but it doesn't matter. I've been planning this for months. Your father's little house, your precious pool, this entire neighborhood dit's all going to change, and you're not going to be here to see it." "Actually," Martinez said, stepping into the light with her weapon raised, "the only thing that's going to change is your address. You're going to federal prison, Patricia, for a very long time." Patricia spun toward Martinez, her gun swinging. Away from the pool? In that instant, Rodriguez emerged from the shadows, his weapon trained on the fugitive's center mass. "FBI, drop your weapon." For a moment, Patricia Kellerman stood frozen between the two agents, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. Martinez could see the calculation in her eyes, the same cold mathematics that had led her to steal from dying children, to forge documents, to destroy families. "You don't understand," Patricia said, her voice carrying a note of genuine surprise. "I was doing this neighborhood a favor. Property values have increased 30% since I arrived. These people should be thanking me." "These people," Martinez said, her voice hard as steel, "are families. They're not stock portfolios or development projects. They're human beings. And you tried to destroy them." Patricia's laugh was bitter. "Human beings, like the children who died because their parents couldn't afford treatment, like the families I've helped relocate to more ... appropriate ... neighborhoods. You think you're saving them, but you're just prolonging their suffering. Drop the weapon, Patricia, now." For a long moment, Patricia stared at Martinez with the cold eyes of a predator who'd finally been cornered. Then, slowly, she lowered. "The gun, you know what the real tragedy is," Patricia said as Rodriguez moved to cuff her. "That pool is going to be an eyesore forever. Property values will stagnate. The neighborhood will decline. All because you couldn't see the bigger picture." Martinez holstered her weapon and moved to the pool's edge, extending her hand to Emma. "Are you hurt?" Emma Chen pulled herself from the water with the fluid grace of a natural athlete, but Martinez could see the shock in her eyes. "Is Coach Peterson?" "Paramedics are on the way," Martinez said gently. "You did good, Emma. You kept your head, and you survived. My dad, your dad is fine. He's the one who called us. He's the reason you're alive." As the paramedics worked on Coach Peterson and backup agents processed the scene, Martinez found herself thinking about the explosion at Patricia's house. The woman had been thorough, destroying evidence and eliminating witnesses, but she'd made one crucial error. She'd underestimated a father's love. David Chen arrived just as they were loading Patricia into the federal transport van. Martinez watched him embrace his daughter, saw the relief and pride in his eyes. This was what Patricia had never understood, that some things couldn't be bought or sold, couldn't be demolished or relocated. Some things were worth fighting for. "Agent Martinez," David said as they prepared to leave. "What happens now?" "Now she goes back to New York to face Fed." The morning sun cast long shadows across the neighborhood, illuminating the stark contrast between David Chen's modest home and the charred crater where Patricia Kellerman's house had stood. Yellow FBI tape fluttered in the breeze like prayer flags, marking the boundaries of what had become a crime scene. David stood in his backyard, coffee growing cold in his hands, watching Emma complete her morning laps. She'd insisted on swimming today, despite everything that had happened. "The water doesn't lie," she'd said, echoing something her mother used to tell her. "It's the only place where everything makes sense." The pool that Patricia had tried so hard to destroy now seemed to glow in the early light, its surface reflecting not just the sky, but the resilience of everyone who'd fought to protect it. Emma's strokes were powerful, precise, each lap a declaration that she wouldn't be broken by fear. "Dad," Emma called from the shallow end. "There's a news van in front of the house." David sighed. The story had broken on the National News 12. Hours ago, federal fugitive arrested in suburban pool confrontation. The headlines made it sound like a television drama. But David knew the real story was more complicated. It was about community, about people who refused to be erased. The doorbell rang as David was toweling off Emma's hair. Through the peephole, he saw Jim Morrison standing next to a woman in a severe black suit, her FBI credentials clearly visible. "Agent Martinez," David said, opening the door. "I wasn't expecting you, Mr. Chen. I hope you don't mind the intrusion, but there are some developments I thought you should know about." Martinez's expression was serious. "May we come in?" They sat in David's modest living room, the morning light revealing the wear on the furniture, the family photos that marked important moments in their lives. Martinez's gaze lingered on a picture of Emma at age 7, grinning beside the pool, with a small trophy in her hands. Patricia Kellerman, her real name is Patricia Kellerman Voss, has been officially charged with multiple federal crimes, Martinez began. Embezzlement, fraud, attempted murder, and destruction of evidence. The explosion at her house was designed to eliminate financial records and communications that linked her to previous cases. "Previous cases?" David asked. "What we discovered about your neighborhood was just the beginning," Jim said grimly. Patricia had been running this same scheme in 4 other communities over the past 5 years. Hundreds of families displaced, millions in property fraud, and at least 3 suspicious deaths. David felt Emma's hand slip into his. "The accountant you mentioned. Michael Torres was the first. Then a city planner in Connecticut who started asking questions about forged documents, and a contractor in New Jersey who refused to demolish. Houses he knew were structurally sound." Martinez's voice hardened. "She's been leaving a trail of bodies wherever she goes." "Jesus," David breathed. "The good news is that her arrest has opened up all of those cases. The FBI is working with local authorities to reverse the property transfers, restore the displaced families, and prosecute her accomplices." Martinez leaned forward. "Mr. Chen, your decision to call the tip line didn't just save your daughter's life, it saved dozens of other families from the same fate." Emma squeezed David's hand. "Dad, what about Coach Peterson?" Martinez's expression softened. "He's going to be fine. Concussion, some bruised ribs, but he's expected to make a full recovery. He's actually been asking about you, Emma. He wants to know if you're still planning to compete in the state championships." "Of course I am." Emma's voice carried the quiet determination that had carried her. Through her mother's death and everything that followed, that's what Mom would have wanted. The conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. David opened it to find Mrs. Garcia from 3 houses down, holding a covered dish and looking nervous. "David, I hope you don't mind. I brought you some food I know you've been through." She gestured vaguely at the FBI agents visible through the window. "I wanted to thank you, thank me, for stopping her, for protecting all of us." Mrs. Garcia's eyes filled with tears. "She came to my house last month, said my daycare was violating zoning laws, that she'd have it shut down if I didn't close it voluntarily. Those children, ... they're everything to me." David invited her in, and within minutes the story poured out. Patricia had been systematically targeting every family business, every sign of working-class life in the neighborhood. The Hendersons' vegetable stand had been hit with health code violations. The Johnsons' auto repair shop had been reported for noise complaints. The Martinez family's food truck had been cited for permit irregularities. She was building a case against the whole neighborhood, Jim said grimly, establishing a pattern of violations that would justify mass relocations. But why? Mrs. Garcia asked. We're good people. We work hard. We pay our taxes. We look out for each other. Martinez's expression was grim. Because you weren't profitable enough. Patricia saw this neighborhood as raw material for development. Your houses, your businesses, your lives, they were just obstacles to be removed. The next hour brought a steady stream of neighbors, each carrying food, each sharing their own story of Patricia's harassment. David began to understand the scope of what had been happening not just to his family, but to everyone around them. Old Mr. Henderson, who'd lived in the neighborhood for 40 years, broke down as he described the fake city citations that had nearly forced him to tear down the greenhouse where he grew vegetables for the local food bank. I thought I was losing my mind, he said, all those official-looking papers, all those threats. I started thinking maybe I was just too old to understand the new rules. The Johnson family had been told their auto repair shop was creating environmental hazards and would need to be relocated. The Martinez family had been informed that their food truck violated aesthetic standards for the neighborhood. The family had been isolated, made to feel like they were the only ones under attack. She was playing us against each other, David realized, making us think we were alone. Classic predator behavior, Martinez confirmed. Isolate the victims, make them feel helpless, then offer a solution that benefits the predator. She probably would have offered to help you relocate, maybe even at a fair price. Emma had been listening quietly, but now she spoke up. She tried to make me feel ashamed. About the pool, about Dad's job, about our car. She said we were bringing down the neighborhood. You were the neighborhood, Mrs. Garcia said fiercely. You and your father, all of us. We're what makes this place worth living in. As the afternoon wore on, the living room filled with neighbors, sharing stories, food, and a growing sense of solidarity. David realized that Patricia's greatest miscalculation hadn't been underestimating the FBI or the power of federal law enforcement. She'd underestimated the bonds between people who'd chosen to build their lives together. There's something else, Martinez said as the crowd began to thin. Patricia's assets are being seized as part of the federal investigation. The shell company that bought her house, the Cayman Islands accounts, all of it. The government is looking at using those funds to compensate her victims. What does that mean? David asked. It means your neighborhood is going to be very well funded for community improvements, new playground equipment, street repairs, maybe even a community center with a proper swimming pool for Emma's training. Emma's eyes lit up. Really, really? Your dad's decision to fight back instead of giving up is going to benefit everyone here. As the FBI agents prepared to leave, Martinez turned back to David. Mr. Chen, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've seen a lot of people face impossible situations. Most of them either give up or get consumed by anger. You chose a third option. What's that? You chose to protect what mattered, no matter what it cost you. That's rare. After everyone had gone, David and Emma sat by the pool as the sun set, painting the water in shades of gold and orange. The neighborhood was quiet now, but it was a different kind of quiet. Peaceful rather than tense, hopeful rather than fearful. Dad, Emma said, I want to dedicate my state championship, swim to Mom, and to Coach Peterson, and to everyone who stood up to Patricia. David pulled his daughter close, feeling the weight of everything they'd survived together. Your mother would be proud of you, not just for the swimming, but for how you handled everything else. You never gave up, even when you were scared. I learned it from you, Emma said simply. David looked out at the pool, remembering the morning when Patricia had first appeared with her clipboard and her threats. She'd seen this place as an obstacle to be removed, a problem to be solved, but she'd been wrong about everything that mattered. The pool wasn't just a collection of concrete and water. It was the place where Sarah had taught Emma to swim, where 3 generations of their family had celebrated birthdays and holidays, where Emma had learned that some dreams were worth fighting for. It was home. And no amount of money or power could take that away? Come on, David said, standing and extending his hand to Emma. Let's go inside. Tomorrow's a new day, and you've got training to do. As they walked toward the house, David felt something shift in his chest, a lightness he hadn't experienced since Sarah's death. Patricia Kellerman had tried to destroy them, but she'd accomplished something else entirely.